an island appeared in the Caspian Sea, only to disappear the next year.
The Caspian Sea is hiding a secret that has frustrated sailors and scientists for over a century. Captains would report seeing land in the distance, only to arrive and find nothing but open ocean. These ghost stories were laughed off until high-tech satellites caught the culprit red-handed. We are not talking about rising sea levels or climate change here. We are talking about a violent force from the center of the Earth that punches through the seabed. It creates temporary kingdoms of mud and fire that rise up to mock the maps before dissolving back into the abyss. The vanishing land. In early 2023, the mystery returned with a vengeance. The Landsat 8 satellite, which monitors the changing landscape of our planet, captured a stunning image. About 15 miles off the coast of Azerbaijan, a new piece of land had been born. It was not small either. This thing was roughly 1,300 feet across. That is massive. To put that into perspective, you could fit several football fields on this new landmass. It had a long, muddy trail drifting away from it, staining the blue waters of the Caspian Sea. It looked like a wound in the ocean. But just like the mysterious sightings from the Cold War, this island was not built to last. It was a temporary visitor, a ghost. By late 2024, the island was almost gone. It was eroding back into the sea, dissolving like sugar in hot tea. The satellite images from Landsat 9 showed the dramatic shrinking of the land. What had been a solid platform was now just a smudge. This creates a terrifying thought for anyone navigating those waters. Imagine sailing towards an island that is marked on your radar, only to find it sinking beneath you as you approach. This specific spot is known as the Kumani Bank. It is also called Chigil-Deniz, and it is not a normal island. It is the mouth of a cannon that shoots the inside of the Earth up to the surface. The thing that the Cold War spies saw and the thing that Landsat captured is the result of a massive mud volcano. Now, when most people hear volcano, they think of hot red lava and mountains in Hawaii. But mud volcanoes are a different beast entirely. They are colder, dirtier, and in some ways much more mysterious. The eruption that created this island happened swiftly. The data shows that the island emerged sometime between January 30th and February 4th of 2023. That means in a span of just 5 days, a massive landmass appeared where there was none. Imagine the violence required to push that much earth from the bottom of the sea all the way to the surface in less than a week. It is a geological blink of an eye. Geologist Mark Tingay from the University of Adelaide has been studying this, and even for experts, it is a shocking display of power. The appearance of the island was not subtle. While the satellites caught the aftermath, the event itself would have been a chaotic mix of gas, water, and sediment blasting upwards. It is like the Earth is vomiting. The pressure builds up deep underground until the rock and mud can no longer hold it back. Then it explodes. But unlike a normal volcano that builds a mountain over thousands of years, these mud volcanoes build islands that the sea immediately tries to destroy. What makes this even more fascinating is that this is not a one-time event. The history of the Kumani Bank is a history of vanishing acts. It is a repeat offender. We have records going back to 1861. That is over 160 years ago. Back then, sailors and early geologists witnessed an eruption that created an island about 285 feet across. It rose 11.5 feet above the water. It was a solid piece of ground. But by early 1862, it was gone. The sea had reclaimed it. Then, in 1950, the biggest event on record occurred. This was the one that likely confused the post-war intelligence community the most. The eruption was massive. It created an island over 2,300 feet across. That is nearly half a mile of new land appearing overnight. It stood 20 feet high. That is tall enough to block the view of a large ship. But again, it did not last. The waves of the Caspian are relentless, and the mud that makes up these islands is soft. It washes away, leaving only a hidden shoal beneath the surface, waiting for the next eruption to rebuild the castle. This cycle of creation and destruction is what makes the Caspian Sea so treacherous and mysterious. You cannot trust the maps because the geography itself is changing. A ship captain in 1951 might have marked an island on his chart, but his grandson sailing the same route in 2020 would sail right through that spot. And then, 3 years later, a new island would block the path again. It is a shifting puzzle. The structure beneath the Caspian Sea is not a building or a bunker. It is a living, breathing geological vent. It is a pressure valve for the planet. And while we now know it is natural, that does not make it any less strange. In fact, the more we learn about it, the more alien it seems. The forces at work here are immense. We are talking about millions of tons of mud and rock being lifted by gas pressure. This brings us to a chilling realization. If these islands can appear so quickly, what happens if one erupts directly underneath a ship? Or worse, underneath an oil platform? The Caspian Sea is rich in oil and gas, and the infrastructure there is worth billions. A sudden eruption like the one at Kumani Bank could be catastrophic. It is a reminder that we are just guests on this planet, and the landlord can change the furniture whenever it wants. But the mud and the land are only half the story. There is something else that comes up with the mud. Something invisible, flammable, and potentially deadly. Because when these underwater mountains blow their tops, they do not just throw dirt. They often breathe fire. The ground opens up and hell follows. Methane monsters. When we think of the ocean, we think of water. Lots of it. Water puts out fire. That is the basic rule of nature we all learn in kindergarten. But the Caspian Sea ignores the rules. In this strange corner of the world, it is not uncommon to see the ocean itself catch fire. The structure we saw in the satellite photos, the Kumani Bank mud volcano, is part of a system that turns the sea into a towering inferno. You might be wondering how a mud volcano creates fire. It sounds contradictory. Mud is wet, but the driving force behind these eruptions is gas, specifically methane. The South Caspian Basin, where Azerbaijan is located, is one of the richest hydrocarbon regions on the planet. Deep beneath the seabed, there are massive reservoirs of oil and natural gas. This is the same stuff we pump into our cars and use to heat our homes. But down there, it is under extreme pressure. When the pressure gets too high, it looks for a way out. It finds weak spots in the rock layers above. As the gas forces its way up, it drags water and sediment with it. This is the mud. But the gas is the propellant. It is the rocket fuel. And sometimes when this mixture breaches the surface, the friction or a spark can ignite the methane. The result is terrifying. Imagine you are a fisherman on a small boat in the Caspian. It is a quiet night. The water is calm. Suddenly the sea begins to boil. A low rumble shakes the hull of your ship, and then hundreds of yards away, a column of fire shoots 500 feet into the air. It lights up the night sky like a second sun. This is not science fiction. This has happened. While we are not 100% sure if the 2023 eruption of Kumani Bank had a massive fire column, past eruptions in the area definitely have. Nearby volcanoes have sent towers of flame hundreds of meters into the air. We are talking about flames that can be seen from miles away. In 2021, another mud volcano in the Caspian, the Dashla volcano, erupted with a massive explosion. The video footage went viral. People thought it was an attack on an oil rig. The sky turned orange. The fire was so intense, it looked like a nuclear mushroom cloud. But it was just the Earth venting gas. This adds a whole new layer of danger to the mystery structure. It is not just a landmass that appears and blocks your path. It is a potential bomb. If a ship were to be near the Kumani Bank when it decided to blow, the crew would not just have to worry about the waves. They would have to worry about being incinerated. The methane gas released during these events is highly concentrated. The connection between the mud and the fire is ancient. In fact, Azerbaijan is often called the land of fire. For thousands of years, people in this region have watched flames dance on the ground and on the water. Ancient Zoroastrian temples were built around natural gas vents that burned eternally. They thought it was a divine miracle. Today we know it is geology, but it is no less awe-inspiring. The eruption mechanism is violent. It is not a slow leak. It is a rapid release. Think of shaking a bottle of soda and then unscrewing the cap. The gas expands instantly, pushing the liquid out. Now replace the soda bottle with a massive underground cavern, replace the liquid with millions of tons of mud, and replace the cap with the bottom of the sea. That is what is happening at Kumani Bank. When the gas ignites, the heat is intense. It can bake the mud as it lands, creating a hard crust on the new island. This might help the island survive a little longer against the waves, but eventually the sea wins. The fire burns out once the gas pressure drops, leaving behind the smoking, muddy remnant that the satellites see. The visual of a burning sea is something that stays with you. It challenges our understanding of safety. We feel safe on a boat because we are surrounded by water. Fire is the enemy of a ship, but usually the fire starts on the boat. Here, the environment itself is the arsonist. Scientists study these flames to understand what is happening deep below. The color of the flame, the height, and the duration all give clues about the size of the gas reservoir. It tells them how much pressure is building up in the crust. And right now, the Caspian is a very pressurized place. The tectonic plates are squeezing the region like a vice, forcing these fluids and gases to the surface. So we have a structure that appears overnight. It is made of mud from the deep earth. It might be accompanied by a pillar of fire that reaches the clouds, and then it vanishes. It is the perfect recipe for a legend. But for the people working on the oil rigs nearby, it is a constant anxiety. They are drilling into the same reservoirs that power these volcanoes. They are poking the dragon. There is a theory that drilling activity might even trigger some of these eruptions, although most geologists say they are natural cycles. But the coincidence is always there. As we extract more oil and gas, are we changing the pressure balance underground? Are we making the Kumani Bank more active? The fire from below is a reminder of the power stored in the crust. It is raw energy, and when it comes out, it does not care what is in its way. The satellite photos show the peaceful aftermath, the gray smudge of the island. They do not show the roar of the gas or the heat of the flame. But there is another side to this story, a history that goes back further than the Cold War. The Kumani Bank has been playing this game of hide and seek for centuries, and the records from the past give us a clue about what might happen in the future. The ghost has a schedule: tracking the beast. To truly understand the mystery of the structure beneath the Caspian Sea, we have to travel back in time. The satellite images from 2023 are just the latest chapter in a very long book. This is not a new phenomenon. The Kumani Bank has been haunting these waters for generations. It is a serial offender, a geological ghost that refuses to stay dead. Let's look at the data. We have reliable records of at least 8 major eruptions from this specific volcano before the 2023 event. That is a pattern. That is a heartbeat. The first recorded eruption was way back in May of 1861. Think about the world back then. The American Civil War was just starting. There were no satellites, no planes, no internet. Communication was slow. In 1861, sailors reported a disturbance in the water. An island formed. It was small compared to the modern ones, only about 285 feet across. It stood about 11 feet above the waves. To the sailors, this was baffling. They marked it on their charts. But imagine the confusion when they came back a year later in 1862 and the island was gone. It had simply erased itself. For decades, these stories were treated like folklore. Sailors are known for telling tall tales, right? Sea monsters, mermaids, phantom islands. But the Kumani Bank kept proving them right. It kept coming back. The most significant event in the 20th century happened in 1950. This was the heavyweight champion of eruptions. The island that formed was massive. It measured nearly 2,300 feet across. That is huge. That is almost half a mile. Imagine a piece of land that big just popping up out of the ocean. It stood 20 feet high. If you were standing on the shore, you might have been able to see it with a telescope. The 1950 eruption was likely the one that really caught the attention of the Soviet military. Remember, the Caspian Sea was Soviet territory at the time. A new island appearing in their inland sea was a matter of national security. They sent ships to investigate. They found a desolate landscape of gray mud, smelling of sulfur and gas. It was not a strategic asset, it was a mess. But the size of the 1950 island tells us something scary. It tells us that the volcano has the potential to go big. The 2023 eruption was large at 1,300 feet, but it was only about half the size of the 1950 event. This means the Kumani Bank is capable of much more than we have seen recently. It is holding back. Geologists have studied the intervals between these eruptions. They are irregular. Sometimes it waits 10 years, sometimes it waits 50. This unpredictability is the problem. You cannot set a clock to it. It is like a dormant beast that wakes up whenever it feels grumpy, and when it wakes up, it changes the map. The erosion process is also fascinating. In 1950, the island was huge, but even an island that big could not fight the Caspian Sea. The waves in this region can be rough. They chipped away at the soft mud. Day by day, the island shrank. It is a war between the earth building up and the water tearing down. The water always wins in the end. This historical context proves that the structure seen on the Cold War photos was almost certainly one of these ephemeral islands. The spies were seeing the aftermath of an eruption. They were seeing the ghost. But what is interesting is that they did not know what it was at first. The declassified reports show confusion. They considered everything from secret submarine docks to crashed UFOs. The truth was far more grounded but no less dramatic. The Kumani Bank is just one of many. Azerbaijan has the highest concentration of mud volcanoes in the world. There are over 300 of them in the region. Some are on land and some are underwater. The ones on land are tourist attractions. People go to see them bubble and burp. But the ones underwater, like Kumani, are the dangerous ones. Because they are underwater, we often miss the start of the eruption. Unless a satellite happens to be looking or a ship happens to be nearby, the event might go unnoticed until the island breaks the surface. This means there could have been dozens of smaller eruptions over the last century that we missed completely. The ghosts might be visiting a lot more often than we think. The recurrence of these islands raises a question. Is the structure getting bigger underground? Each eruption brings up tons of material. Does this mean the seabed is rising? Is a permanent island eventually going to form? Some geologists think that if the eruptions happen frequently enough, the mud might pile up faster than the sea can wash it away. We might see the birth of a permanent new landmass in our lifetime. But for now, the Kumani Bank remains a temporary visitor. It is a reminder of the dynamic nature of our planet. Nothing is static. Even the ground beneath our feet is moving, shifting, and sometimes exploding. The history of this volcano is a history of violence and silence. It screams and then it hides. But why here? Why is this specific spot in the Caspian Sea so active? To answer that, we have to look deeper. We have to look at the massive stone plates that float on the surface of our world. They are crashing into each other and the Caspian Sea is caught in the middle of the fight. The ground is being squeezed until it pops. Why it happens. So, why does the Caspian Sea behave like a pot of boiling soup? Why are there structures appearing and disappearing? It is not magic, it is mechanics, specifically plate tectonics. The Earth is like a giant jigsaw puzzle, but the pieces are moving and they are heavy. Azerbaijan and the Caspian Sea are sitting right in the middle of a slow-motion car crash between giant continents. Here is the deal. The Arabian tectonic plate is moving north, it is pushing upwards. At the same time, the Eurasian plate is sitting there blocking the way. The Caspian Sea is caught in the convergence zone. It is being squeezed. Imagine holding a tube of toothpaste and squeezing it from the bottom. The toothpaste has to go somewhere. Usually it goes up and out of the cap. In this analogy, the toothpaste is the mud, gas, and water deep underground. The cap is the mud volcano. The squeezing hand is the Arabian plate crashing into the Eurasian plate. The pressure generated by this collision is unimaginable. It folds the rock layers. It creates mountains. The Caucasus Mountains nearby are a result of this same collision. But under the sea, the rock layers are soft and filled with fluids. When the pressure gets too high, the fluids are forced upward. They migrate through cracks and faults in the rock. As they rise, they mix with the sediment, the dirt and clay, turning it into a thick slurry. This is the mud. It is cold, thick, and heavy. But remember the gas, the methane? That is expanding as it rises. It pushes the mud faster and faster. By the time this mixture reaches the seabed, it is moving with incredible force. It punches through the bottom of the ocean and keeps going. If there is enough material, it piles up until it breaks the water's surface, creating the island. This tectonic war is constant. The plates move about an inch or so every year. That does not sound like much, but over millions of years it changes the face of the planet. And it ensures that the pressure cooker underneath the Caspian is always on. It never turns off. This is why the Kumani Bank will keep erupting. It is why the ghost will keep coming back. As long as the plates are moving, the mud will flow. The sediment in this region is also special. It is very young geologically speaking. It was deposited quickly by ancient rivers. This means it is not fully turned to stone yet. It is still soft and pliable. It is perfect for making mud volcanoes. If the ground were solid granite, the gas might just leak out slowly. But because it is soft sediment, the gas can push the whole mess upward. Scientists call this sedimentary volcanism. It is a fancy term for rocks behaving like fluids. It is weird science. Usually rocks break or bend. Here they flow. It blurs the line between solid and liquid. The unique combination of rapid sedimentation, lots of dirt piling up, and tectonic compression, the squeezing, is rare. That is why Azerbaijan is the capital of mud volcanoes. Nowhere else on Earth has this perfect storm of geological conditions. It is a freak of nature. And this squeezing does not just create islands, it creates earthquakes. The South Caspian Basin is seismically active. The earthquakes and the mud volcanoes are cousins. They are both symptoms of the same disease, tectonic stress. Sometimes an earthquake can shake the ground enough to trigger a mud volcano eruption. It is like shaking a soda can before opening it. So, the mystery structure is really a symptom of a planetary battle. The Caspian Sea is just the battlefield. The satellite photos are showing us the scars of this battle. Every time a new island pops up, it is the Earth releasing tension. It is a safety valve. If that pressure did not release through mud volcanoes, it might release through massive, devastating earthquakes instead. In a way, these weird islands are protecting the region from something worse. But the science of mud volcanoes goes beyond our planet. What we see in the Caspian Sea might be the key to finding life on other worlds. Because believe it or not, there are structures that look exactly like the Kumani Bank on the surface of Mars. The red planet has its own secrets. Interplanetary geology. This is where things get really wild. We started with Cold War spies and phantom islands, but now we are going to space. The strange behavior of the Kumani Bank has caught the attention of planetary scientists. Why? Because when they look at the northern lowlands of Mars, they see the same thing. Mars is covered in mounds and structures that look suspiciously like the mud volcanoes in the Caspian Sea. For a long time, we thought Mars was dead, a dry, dusty rock. But these features suggest that Mars might have a wet, active underground. If the mounds on Mars are indeed mud volcanoes, it means there was, or is, fluid flowing beneath the surface. Mark Tingay, the geologist who studied the Kumani Bank, pointed this out. He called them weird and wonderful features. And he noted that scientists think the muddy mounds on Mars form the same way. Gas-rich sediments spewing out to the surface. This is a total game changer. Why? Because on Earth, mud volcanoes spew out methane. Methane is an organic molecule. It can be produced by geological processes, yes, but it is also the signature of life. Bacteria produce methane. If Mars has mud volcanoes pumping methane onto the surface, it raises the massive question, is there life in the mud? Studying the Kumani Bank helps NASA understand Mars. By watching how the island forms, how it erodes, and what the mud is made of, they can interpret the images from the Mars rovers better. The Caspian Sea is a laboratory for the red planet. It is a terrestrial analog. Imagine a rover driving up to one of those mounds on Mars. It drills into the sediment. It finds the same slurry that created the island off the coast of Azerbaijan. And inside that slurry, it finds fossilized microbes. That is the dream scenario. And it all starts with understanding the structure our satellites found here on Earth. The shapes are identical, the way the mud flows is identical. The only difference is that on Earth, the mud volcano is fighting the ocean. On Mars, it is fighting the thin atmosphere and the freezing cold. But the mechanism is the same: pressure, fluid, eruption. This connection makes the Kumani Bank much more than just a navigational hazard. It is a cosmic clue. It connects the deep history of Earth to the deep history of our neighbor. It suggests that the processes shaping our world are universal. So, would you dare to sail across the Caspian knowing an island could erupt beneath you? Or do you think there's still something the governments aren't telling us about these mud structures? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this mystery, smash that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the unknown.